Is there any public comment? Okay, no public comment. We'll go to instructional council update. Hello. How's it going?
And you?
Good.
Being a little rushed and being at my alma mater today. So.
What was
You went
your
to
alma
Hope? Yes, I went to Hope. So thank you. And I'm here to just give you a beginning of the year update on instructional council. So instructional council has not met yet, but we do have our calendar set. And the district representatives on instructional council have been set. Our first meeting is September 19th. The GREA Executive Council is working through who their membership will be, and they will let us know, but our first meeting is September 19th.
Okay, great. Did you guys meet at any point since our last board meeting? So that would be probably,
That would have
I guess,
been
May.
back we met twice in the month of May.
Okay.
We would have received written documentation of those reports.
Just in our board packets.
You
Okay.
would receive those in your board packets, yes. So we have not met since that time.
So on September 19th, the district staff is in place and then the GREA staff will be there. Okay, so the next meeting we'll see how that goes. So any planned agenda items or just getting to establish it?
Yes, getting all sides, in place. And there are actually a couple items that have come that are around syllabi, that have come to our attention, but we've not formally sat down and we will work through the agenda for time. And then where exactly we're going to meet, given the changes at staff development. We will be starting out in 4-H building.
Okay, cool.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, now it looks like the heavy work, the heavy intellectual work, wrapping our head around some numbers here, so, and looks like some good news too, so.
Okay, good afternoon, Pastor Moody.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Baker. I would like to provide you today with a quick overview of the Michigan Merit Exam and then share with you some results from the 2012-2013 school year. What I have provided for you in this PowerPoint, this is an overview of MME. MME is a very high stakes test that we take in the high school division. It's given to juniors and some seniors in our school district. As you'll notice, there are times up there for each exam. Day one is what most students would consider the most rigorous exam, which is the ACT. Day two, we have the work keys test, which determines if students are ready for the workforce. And then day three is a Michigan test, which is comparable to a MEET test at the high school division. If you look at the ACT test, which is taken on day one of the MME, you will notice the scores that students need to be considered college ready. Maximum score on the ACT is a score of 36. Many would consider a score of 18 a passing score, which could get you into many colleges. But as we look closely at the ACT college readiness benchmarks, you will notice that an 18 does not consider you college ready. So 18 is considered college ready in English, 22 in reading, 22 in mathematics, and 23 in science. You'll notice that there's a change in those scores for the upcoming school year. In reading, 21 used to be considered college ready, now it's 22. In science, which was always the highest, is now at a 23. And the bottom there, I gave an explanation of what it means to be college ready. So if you hit those numbers, there is a 50% chance that you will receive a 50% chance that you will receive at least a B in the course, and a 70% chance that you'll receive at least a C in the course by hitting those numbers. If you look at day one of ACT, this will give you a breakdown of the areas in which the students have to work. There are 4 areas plus a writing component: English, mathematics, reading, and science. You'll see the times that are given for all of the sections. With the writing test, it's graded on a 6-point rubric by 2 raters. So the 2 raters will then take their scores, add them up, and then that is the score the student receives for the writing portion. If the raters are off by more than 1 point, a 3rd rater comes in to rate the student's writing sample. Day 2 is a work keys assessment, and in our division for the last couple of years, we've made incremental gains on the Michigan Merit Exam. Our theory of action has been, if you focus on ACT, everything else will take care of itself. But what we found as we get better at this is that we're giving up many points when students are not successful on work keys, and we're also giving up many points when students are not successful on day 3 of the Michigan Merit Exam. You'll notice the National Career Readiness certificates that students receive. A student receives a bronze certificate if he or she receives a 3 on the work keys examination. And if you look at the last line, a bronze is equivalent to a student knowing the foundational skills for 16% of the jobs in the work keys database. Kind of goes like the Olympics: silver, gold, and then platinum. I guess that goes a little above the Olympics, where if a student receives a platinum National Career Readiness certificate, that means he or she is prepared for 99% of the work keys jobs in their database. In the Grand Rapids Public Schools, we had 1 student qualify for platinum, and then you can see in the lower left-hand corner the breakdown that all the other students received in our school district. A goal for us this year is to not only do well on ACT, but also have students acquire this National Career Readiness certificate. So this is a point of emphasis for this particular school year, which hasn't been in previous school years. Dr. Baker.
Yeah, to what extent does this end up meaning anything to the students other than the note that they got bronze, gold, silver?
Absolutely. There have been some business partners that we've been in contact with that are actually requesting these certificates, especially for the upperclassmen in our high schools who have taken the MME. I know when I was the principal at Creston, students came to me looking for this. And to be quite honest, when we were only focusing exclusively on ACT, we really looked at work keys as an afterthought. We can't do that anymore. We have to show, I told all the principals, I want the juniors, or I'm sorry, the seniors who did wonderfully, who attained these certificates. I want their faces to be prominently displayed in the school that they earned this. I want to make a big deal out of earning this because, if you receive that platinum or gold or even silver, and bronze to some extent, there are some jobs right now that you're ready for, and I want folks to know this. Does it mean everything to every single employer? No, but at least it shows that there's a level of workforce readiness that we have in our school system. And if you look at that number 14.5, 14.5 of the students did not qualify for any. So as we move forward, we want to get rid of that 14.5 and make that 0 so that all students can go into the workforce and have the skills needed to be successful. Yes, Pastor.
What is being done in terms of preparation? Is there a preparation that the students need to go to before they take this test?
Yeah, so in the past, and I'll get into it a little later in my presentation, but in the last couple of years we've used this strategy called Attack the Gap strategy, where we assess students on Explore, Plan, and ACT. We find the areas on which they're struggling, and then teachers focus on those particular areas in their classrooms for a period of that class, for a section of that class period. If you have juniors who have not mastered pre-algebra or algebra or geometry, we have to take a step back, unfortunately, when we've got some students who are so far behind, and address those areas in which we're struggling. If as juniors we're exclusively teaching Algebra 2 to students who are struggling with pre-algebra, I feel we're doing a disservice to our students. Now, it's a balancing act, because if I'm sitting in Luisa's junior math class, we have to put on that transcript that that student was successful in Algebra 2. So we don't want to devote the entire class period to remediation, but we have to know that we've got kids who are struggling with foundational skills, and therefore we need to take a portion of the class period to address those skills. That same strategy, Pastor Moody, will be used this year to address the areas on word keys. If you look at the upper left-hand side of the slide, there are only 3 areas on which students are being graded on the work keys.
Right.
Applied mathematics, reading for information, and locating information, which is totally different from the other assessments they have. So I think it will be relatively easy to wrap our heads around these 3 areas, because these are areas on which the students are also assessed in other tests. But I think it's a huge feather in our caps if we can, really make students progress through the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, and not have any kids who don't qualify for any of them. So we're just taking it a step forward. And to toot the horns of all the principals and the teachers and the students in the high school division, this was the first year that we've ever broken 17 for an ACT composite score.
Good.
Before that, we were in the 60s. We've been as far as low 16s. We've gone to 17.1 for the first time since we've started giving ACT, in a year where the scores at City were down considerably. So that's what some may say. Well, you've got one kind of outlier here that will bring everybody up. We made those gains when one school that's always done wonderfully has taken a dip. So, if you don't mind, want me to go to the next slide?
Okay.
Thank you. So this is day 3 of the Michigan Merit Exam, and to be quite honest, this is the most difficult day to motivate students. With the ACT, they know they need to do wonderfully on that test to get into the college or university of their choice. With the work keys, there's now a National College Readiness component for which they receive a certificate. It's pretty easy, or I believe it will become pretty easy, to motivate students to do well on that. This third test is a test that falls into the accountability metrics that we have for the state of Michigan, that will place us on a top to bottom list at the low end if we don't do well, but there's really not a whole lot of motivation for students to do well on day 3. Our goal is to do wonderfully on MME, but we have to be realistic that students are probably going to take day 1 more seriously than days 2 and 3. So this is a challenge for us, but schools have done pretty well, even though students know that this is probably the least important test of the 3. So what this does here is this shares with you what becomes part of an MME score. The areas that are labeled S, that means that some of those components are used for your overall MME score. I'm sorry. Oh, I said that correctly. That some of the components are used for your MME score, and the elements that are labeled A, those are the elements that are all used for the MME score. So if you look at writing, your entire writing score goes into your overall MME score. Everything with writing. Now if you look at day 3, that's a day that students historically have not taken as seriously as the other days, but you can see why we need to take that day very seriously, because there's a portion of mathematics, a portion of science, and a portion of social studies that goes to our overall accountability ranking of the state of Michigan. So although it's a day where we don't have a whole lot of carrots for students, so to speak, it's still a very important day. This is a slide. These next 2 slides have lots of numbers. One area on which we are rated in the top to bottom ranking, as you probably said a million times, 50% of the top to bottom ranking is your overall achievement in your building, 25% is your improvement in your building, and 25% is your achievement gap in your building. So the smaller the achievement gap in your building, the better it is for your school. One thing I would like you to take notice of is that level 4 column, okay? So level 4 means no proficiency at all, okay? No proficiency. Number 1s and 2s, a high level of proficiency. Take a look at math, and you'll look from 2008 till 2013. In 2008, there was 71% of the students were not proficient at all in mathematics. If you look to 2013, not that that's a number for which we want to have a ticker tape parade. But what you'll notice is that number is significantly less than what it was in 2008. Science is an area on which our scores have been stagnant for quite some time, okay? But if you look at the other areas, social studies included, 25% is the lowest it's ever been on those students who have no proficiency. I believe that this is attributed to when we work with our principals, when we work with our teachers, we do not want any single-digit ACT scores. No kids with single digits. So if you have no kids with single-digit ACT scores, your lowest kids are going to have those 13s and 14s and not those 10s. Therefore, I believe the achievement gap will not be as large. If you look at the next slide, you'll also notice for reading, it's the lowest it's been in quite some time. And in writing, you're at 15% of your kids who are not proficient. So is it wonderful that we have 15% of our kids in our school district who are not proficient in writing? No, that's not acceptable. But the numbers in all areas except for science have improved in the non-proficient category. And I think that's something for which the teachers and students and principals should be commended, and we will continue to address those areas so we can have more 1s and 2s and fewer 4s and 3s.
So
So
this has been the same test since 2000.
Absolutely.
It's not like what
Hasn't
happened
changed.
with the meat. Okay.
Hasn't changed.
Okay.
This test has
Same
not
measurement,
changed.
no.
And there is a strategy out there, Dr. Baker, that when we're preparing our students, and this is something that kind of flies in the face of everything we've ever told kids since they were in kindergarten, but you don't need to read the directions. Why? Because they never change. And we give you practice tests. You're going to see the same thing in October and January as you'll see in March. So this is probably the only time ever you would tell a student not to read the directions, but to your point, the test does not change. So how did we get here? We talked about the attack the gap strategy, where teachers in the high school division, the core area teachers, are devoting a portion of their class periods to address areas on which students are struggling. All of our students take the Explore Plan and ACT. All of the students are then given instruction based on 3 areas, based on ACT scores of 13 to 15, 16 to 19, and 20 to 23. Our single-digit students, we are trying to get them into that 13 to 15 category, and it is not as easy as it sounds, okay? But I believe a huge part of this is around the feedback that we give students. It's whole group feedback, where we look for themes. Where are all our juniors struggling? But then it's individualized feedback as to where is Johnny struggling. If you look at Marzano's work and you look at the 10 best strategies you can put in place for effective classroom instruction, feedback is near the top. If you have an effect size of 0.25, that's considered a low effect size. 0.50 is an average effect size. 0.80 or greater is a high effect size. With feedback, it's above 0.80. So it's something we're asking our teachers to provide students on a daily basis. That feedback needs to be timely, that feedback needs to be constructive, and that feedback needs to be based on some type of criteria.
Ron, you mentioned before that you've implemented the Explore Plan.
Correct.
Can you
Correct.
not make sure that everybody knows?
Okay,
what it is?
Explore Plan and ACT is part of the EPAS system, which is the Educational Planning and Assessment System, which the Explore test is a test that's given to many middle school students and also some 9th grade students. The Plan test is given to 10th grade students, and the ACT is given to 11th grade students. Each test prepares students for the ultimate goal of an ACT. An ACT is a 36. You can't attain a 36 on a Plan or Explore because your teachers haven't covered that much content yet. It's a really good predictor as to how well a student will do. So what we do with EPAS is, freshman year, when the students come in September, we get all of our class lists together, and then in early October, we assess all the freshmen with Explore. We get our diagnostic data. The students get back an individualized report, which tells them what their score is, their areas of success, their areas on which they need to improve. The principals and the teachers of the building also get an overall score of how well all the freshmen did on the Explore test. So they put in some strategies to address all the freshmen, and then they put in some individualized strategies to address specific students. For the freshmen, we assess them in October, and we assess them in March. The sophomores, we do the same with the plan test. We assess them at the beginning of the year, we assess them in March. With the juniors, we assess them 3 times, okay? So we assess them in October, and then we assess them in January to see what gains were made. And we put in strategies and interventions in between October and January. And then we figure from January until March, we've got that one last push to help them become successful. Some folks in our division, teachers included, have made us rethink, do we really need the 3 assessments junior year? Or should we have 2 assessments so it's comparable to freshmen and sophomores? The first year we did this, I would say we really need those 3 assessments because we don't have Explore and Plan to fall back on. But now that Explore and Plan are in the system, we may be over-testing students in the junior year. So I'm always, working very closely with the principals and teachers because the last thing I want to do is over-test students when we should be providing quality instruction. Just to go through these rather quickly, the PD opportunities that principals and teachers have, as you know, we've moved to more of a menu option in high schools where teachers' professional development can be differentiated based on the needs or the wants of teachers. What we've done with our principals is we have taken them to schools that are comparable to ours, and there are not that many schools that are comparable to ours that have high rates of achievement. I've taken the principals to Warren, Michigan, where we have visited some high poverty schools that have had some significant gains on ACT. I've taken the principals to New Buffalo, which is a town down south which has 50% poverty, but has its ACT scores in the 22s when they started out in the 16s. So these are the schools that I'm taking our principals to because taking us to a district that's doing wonderfully, that has 5% poverty, is not going to do anything for us. We need to do our very best to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So that's what we've tried to do. We know, though, that we've had some pretty significant gains in our division, but there are not significant gains that are happening around the state. For example, the Lansing Public Schools, they have 3 schools, similar demographics to the Grand Rapids Public Schools, special education students, English language learners, lots of students in poverty. Their percentile rankings are 0, 0, and 1. So lots of schools like ours are in that lowest 5%. We're trying to do our very best and not to compete against our colleagues because we want all students to do wonderfully. But there are high stakes attached to this work. And I don't want to tell another principal that he has to go to another building or tell 50% of a staff that they need to go to another school because we ended up on some list. So we're doing our very best in our division to provide a wonderful education and a balance, but keeping our eye on the prize and starting with the end in mind. The last 2 pieces on this slide that I'd like to talk to you about, if people think in the high school division that we're doing test prep, we are not doing test prep. We do, though, devote a day before the students take the test, so-called MME boot camps, and they happen in almost all of the buildings, and I'm sure they will happen in all of the buildings this year, where we walk students through test-taking strategies. What we're doing throughout the year is we are addressing gaps in learning. We are addressing content. What we do in February is we do some test-taking strategies to ensure that everyone's successful. So what's next? We've been working with Mrs. Evans' team and the curriculum coordinators to start with the end in mind. Now in the high school division, we've got a little bit of a dilemma, whereas we are part of Common Core. We know that Smarter Balance is coming in 2015, but the metric by which we're judged in the high school division is still MME. Okay? So we want to be as innovative as possible. We want to ensure that our curriculum is aligned with Common Core and Smarter Balance, but we are judged by 1 or 3 tests that students take in March. So it's a balance that we're doing now. A challenge that the high school division is going to have with Smarter Balance is, right now, colleges recognize ACT. Colleges recognize SAT. As of right now, I haven't heard of too many colleges who are asking for, or will be asking for, students' Smarter Balance scores. I'm hoping that will change. It's going to be difficult, just like day 3 of the MME, to motivate students for a test that may mean nothing to them. ACT means a lot to students. It's easy to motivate students to take an ACT, not so much other tests. So that's a challenge that we're going to have. We've been working with the curriculum coordinators, specifically in English, to address the writing portion. We are now, for this upcoming school year, following ACT's writing rubric. There were many writing rubrics in the district. Problem with that is, if Ottawa Hills gives a student a 6 for Ottawa Hills rubric, and Innovation Central gives a kid a 3 for the same things, that's a challenge. A student who is getting a 6, it really might only be getting a 3. To ensure that we're comparing apples to apples this year, we've adopted ACT's college readiness rubric for persuasive essays, and we're, with Roseanne and Ms. Lofton and Carolyn's help, we've aligned everything to that particular rubric. I'm working with John Harper to ensure that science is on point. As I referenced before, it's an area that's been stagnant for quite some time. We've made some gains in other areas. The challenge with science is, on the ACT, it's not a science test. It's a reading test. Okay? It's not a science test. So our science teachers will have to take a portion of their class period to ensure that our students are ready for that particular assessment. We have an academic strategies class that we have for all of our juniors in all of our buildings, which also helps address some of those gaps, because we can't get to everything while we're trying to teach the Michigan Merit Curriculum. Whatever we do in the high school division is intense and intentional, starting with the end in mind. We understand that this is the metric by which we're judged, so we can't have gaps in that. We're doing a disservice to kids when we're not preparing them for the content that's on this particular assessment. We're doing a disservice to them. So we're working with the curriculum team, we're working with teachers, we're working with principals to address those gaps. Many of you probably already know this, but when we put out there to students that we only want them to get an 18, which even ACT will say that's considered passing for a composite score, students will fall short in our state if they just hit that number. Now, many of the schools up there, especially Ferris, and that's why I put an asterisk next to Ferris, Ferris has been very helpful in working with our students who have 18s, even some students who had 17s, working in summer bridge programs. University of Michigan has helped us in the past when our students haven't hit that 28 threshold. And as you can see, 25% of the students at the University of Michigan have a 28, and 75% or above have a 32. But University of Michigan has helped us out with some students who are in summer bridge programs, and those students are still on campus being successful. So is it the end-all be-all if you don't hit this particular number? I think we all know it isn't, but it's just nice to see what colleges are expecting of their freshman students.
Does Ferris have a number?
Ferris's number is an 18, that's what we found, but there were so many situations where Ferris has helped us, and we can get you an exact number, Pastor Moody, but we wanted to really highlight Ferris as a school that's been helping us considerably with many of our kids who have 18s and 17s. We wanted to highlight that, but we can email that to you.
That's good.
So this is a slide that I don't really like the Minnesota Vikings colors, but because I'm a Lions fan and big win on Sunday.
All right.
Right? But I want to show you this because this really shows all the work that the buildings and the teachers and the students put in. So in October 12, all of the students in the schools listed on the left side had the baseline score of that number. Okay, so at Central, which was Central HST last year, when they assessed their kids in October, their kids had a 14.6. When their kids took the assessment in March, really only a few months later, if you factor in Thanksgiving break and Christmas break and everything else, they had quite a jump. Okay, and what I labeled on the bottom is the schools in purple are the schools that have not only made a jump from their baseline, the schools also made a jump from the previous school year. And what we call that in the high school division is, those are our moving the needle schools, right? I want to move the needle, and I understand how difficult that is. But at the end of the day, I want to be better than we've ever been before. And I believe, you know what, effort creates ability. And we have lots of teachers right now who are feeling pretty empowered because they are the persons who are helping make this change. The folks who are in yellow They had still a jump from their baseline scores, but they didn't have a jump from the previous school year. Okay? The next slide here, I did a comparison of the 2013 school year compared to the 2012 results. Okay? So you'll notice Central, there's a significant jump. City had a dip. One thing you probably know about City though, City kind of goes up and down around that 25, 24. Historically, that's where they've been. As you can see, Creston made a jump. GR Montessori made a significant jump, as well as Central HST. GR Montessori had fewer students than the others. I think they tested about 10 students. So that when you're looking at those, although the school did wonderfully, they were not testing as many students as others. If we go down, as you can see, Union, 2 years in a row, have made jumps, moving on that upward trajectory. The Academy Design and Construction, and small numbers, but it has its own school code. So therefore, those scores are not included in Union scores. UPrep, they have had their first year of data. Okay, that's the first year. And I think in the previous slide, if I'm not mistaken, UPrep, when they assessed their students in October of 12, had a 14. When they assessed them in March of 13, a few months later, had a 2.2 jump. Okay. What I will go through this relatively quickly, but what I did is I wanted to show you how each school did. So the purple is they not only improved from their baseline, they improved from the previous school year as well. Central improved from their baseline, also the previous school year as well. City improved from the previous school year in mathematics, but did not improve in English, reading, science, and their composite scores, but they did make improvements from their baseline, and you can see where they started. If you look in October of 12, and then you look at 2013, their students' scores went up significantly, but they had a long way to go from October to March. Creston, all the purples were an improvement from the previous school year. Science, there was a little bit of a difference, but as you can see, lots of improvement from the previous school year. GR Montessori, same thing, improvement from the previous school year. In Ottawa Hills, we had improvements from the previous school year. We had an improvement from the baseline, and I'm sorry you can't see that one. I can see it on my screen, and you may see it on the papers you have. Ottawa actually, in mathematics, dipped from the baseline. So when I'm sharing this information with principals and teachers, to me this is an area of concern in this one particular content area. Because as a division, you could see that from baseline to March, we all went up. So that's an area on which we need to focus. If you look at South-East Career Pathways, they've got similar challenges in math and English. Went up in science. They're testing a very small group of students like Grand Rapids Montessori. But this is just kind of a breakdown to show you where everyone is. Union High School is the school that went from the 1st percentile in the state to the 9th percentile in the state. They've had 2 years of improvement. Their scores, as you can see, in October 12, the baseline, they were at 15. 2013 ACT is 16. Their scores have gone up from last year's scores as well. An area where they dipped a little bit was reading, but they still made improvements from their baseline results. UPrep, I only have 1 year of data for their juniors, so there is an improvement from baseline. We hope to present to you next year that they will have an improvement from the previous school year.
So Ron, just a couple things
Sure.
about this.
Yep.
So if we look at Union High School,
Yep.
Since that's the biggest comprehensive one.
Yeah.
So I think it's, well, actually, let's look at Ottawa Hills, because it looks
Okay.
like there was more improvement during the year.
Sure.
So if we look at 2012 ACT, that was last year's,
Correct.
the
That was
previous year's
actual ACT.
juniors. Okay, that was the previous year's juniors. 2013 ACT scores are this year's juniors, so that's a different group of students.
Right. The two columns on the 2013 ACT and the 2012 ACT, those are two different cohorts of students.
Right, but
The
the October 12 baseline is the same group
Same
of
group of
students as the
students.
2013 ACT.
Correct.
And so
I'm
this is significant improvement. So this is where the students were at. So 11 on the English and 15 on the ACT. That's a pretty significant
Huge.
gain there
Huge.
with the same group of kids. So this, the 15s were the same group of kids that got 11
Yeah.
on this ACT in October. So,
And Dr. Baker, that is the challenge.
Right.
So there is clear evidence that these buildings are working hard. You know, you're taking a junior class that has an 11.3 in English, and then when they take the assessment, they move the kids to a 15.6. Phenomenal gains.
In very few months.
Right? In a few months. And this is attributed to, I believe, the work that the teachers are doing, the principals are doing, the students are doing in those buildings with parent support and district support. But unfortunately, if we don't move that needle, which is gains from the previous school year, there's a high potential that will end up on someone's list. And that's unfortunate, even after you've noticed the considerable gains that were made in that particular building. So please believe me, the principals get and the teachers get a considerable amount of praise for doing this work. But it's really unfortunate when they've done all this and they still show up on someone's list because the 15.3 just isn't high enough. And one thing to keep in mind on the top to bottom list is, if you think of Saginaw Buena Vista, if you think of Inkster, those are two schools that have always been very low on the top to bottom list. Both of those school systems just went out of business. So that's two school districts that are no longer on this list. Well, what does that do?
Somebody's gotta be at the bottom.
Right? There always has to be a low 5%. If I made the rules, I would hope that we would judge schools by the progress they make every single year. When a student walks into your classroom, how much success has he or she had as a result of being in your classroom every day under your direction and your instruction? To me, that seems like that makes a lot of sense, but we need to be savvy enough to know that if our gains are stagnant from the previous year, or they dip, we could show up on one of those lists, and there are major ramifications for our teachers.
let me ask this at the school level. And this isn't to take anything away from the teachers, but what would you explain as the reasons for going from an 11 to a 15? So this is obviously the content that's learned
Yeah.
in the teacher's classroom, the English teacher in the classroom, but yet more is happening than just that
So,
English teacher.
So
right?
one thing we noticed with some folks who are looking at our data very closely, principals, teachers, school improvement teams, school improvement facilitators, we noticed on English that many students were struggling with the grammar section. And what we found is if students understood the 7 comma rules, right, that they could get an 8.
That
I'm
awful
sorry.
comma thing.
I'm sorry. But this is one thing we noticed.
I watched one of the teachers do that comma test and I thought I was gonna go nuts.
But
I'd like to quiz everybody on the room about those.
I might do quite well, but we can do it off camera. But what we notice is if students know those 7 comma rules, on the English section, they can do no worse than an 18. So there's some things we addressed right away. There were some points of emphasis on where we shifted gears really quickly after we got those initial results. Dr. Baker, the superintendent of New Buffalo told our principals there was a young man in the building who was really, really struggling and couldn't get into a particular university because he didn't score a 23. He scored a 22. And after multiple attempts, the student got direct feedback from a teacher, and what they found was the young man didn't know how to use semicolons. Okay? And lots of people don't know how to use semicolons, but this young man didn't. Once they had some instruction with semicolons, some direct instruction, and the student found out how to do it in English, that was enough to give him a bump, and therefore got the score he needed. We can't, this feedback thing is so powerful. When teachers, English teachers, take home 200 papers, okay, think about that. Take home 200 papers and grade papers all weekend. And sometimes because of the amount of papers they're grading, it takes a few days to get back to kids. And then you hand the paper back to the student and it's filled with red marks and they put it in that circular file next to the door. That's probably not going to help a student go anywhere, right? But if our teachers, if we're formatively assessing every day and we're addressing those needs right on the spot and doing it in a timely manner, I believe that sticks. But if I give you an assignment, you give it back to me 2 weeks later with a whole bunch of red marks, that doesn't really mean a lot to me. So I think the response time has improved considerably with our teachers, where it's, I need to provide you feedback on this right now so we can address this and move on to some other areas on which you're struggling. And I think this is my last slide. Oh, it is, okay. So just a recap, the top to bottom list, and it's connected to the MME in our division. So if people do not think this is important, in our division, those 3 days will put you on that list, either in a really good place, somewhere in between, or a really bad place. Achievement is 50%. Our scores are being compared to scores of school districts that are 1% or 2% poverty. So for that particular piece, it doesn't matter what your extenuating circumstances are, we're all being judged the same way. For the improvement in achievement, schools can get a considerable bump, as you saw with Union High School, where you have 2 years of gains. Okay, when you move to the 1st percentile to the 9th percentile, and although we don't want to get all excited about the 9th percentile, it's quite an accomplishment. The achievement gap piece, okay? So 25% is, are your best students in the building outperforming the students who are not doing very well by a large amount? So we want to ensure that we have a small achievement gap in the building, and our students moving toward the top, and not everybody toward the bottom.
I know this is gonna be dumb. Can
No.
you kind of explain how you measure?
Measured, which one?
I'm looking at the achievement gap.
The achievement gap.
The
So
top scoring 30% of the students versus the bottom.
absolutely. So the highest, it's not achievement gap based on, we've always heard of achievement gap based on like race or something else. It's your highest achieving students in your building. The best example I can give is, you've got a lot of students in your building who are getting A's, and lots of students who are getting E's. Okay, that's kind of a layman's terms example, even though we don't get A's and E's. We want it to be, these students get closer to the highest achieving students in the building. There's not this huge achievement gap in your building. And we feel that by reducing some of those single digits and getting those students out of the non-proficient category, we'll bump them up. Therefore, the achievement gap will be smaller. Do you have any other questions
About this?
about anything?
Actually, I have one.
Please.
Does anybody else have any questions? Because I'm actually going to make a request. So, one of the things that Mo and I have been talking about this for a long time, but anyway, is how do we get this to the entire board to get to an understanding of this on a constant basis? So that way, we just always we know what the fund balance is,
That's true.
but we don't know how we did on the MMEs, or the ACTs. I like this chart, the one that has all the districts with the October 12 baseline, the ACT 2013. This one here.
Okay. Yep.
I wonder if we could figure out a way, if we could add the third column, which is the ACT 2012 in the same sheet.
Dr. Baker, I thought that was confusing. I'm sorry. So I had it that way.
Yeah.
And I made it that way. So if I
Or maybe even these 2 pages together. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying.
What I tried to
Yeah.
show you, but that's okay. I can go back to the other way if you think that's
Either
okay.
way, I think, is that because what we see is right off the bat, we see all the schools.
Yep.
And we know, and so it's one thing to compare last year to this year, but it's, I think that we need to be able to compare the October to the
Absolutely.
March. And so we can see the growth, because when you look at, like especially the way it was reported about Ottawa Hills, what you see is Ottawa Hills didn't do as good as they did last year.
Yeah.
But when you see what happened at Ottawa Hills this year,
Where they
then
started.
there was a lot of improvement between October and March. And
Absolutely.
we won't know that. So when people say to us, well,
Yeah.
what about Ottawa Hills? We don't necessarily know that.
And Dr. Baker, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because there's a considerable amount of work that goes into this. And I've never seen, principals and teachers are very deflated when that list comes out, and they know they've made considerable gains in a particular school year. And for that top to bottom list, you're looking at 2 years of results. But just think of the work that particular department
Right.
put in only to show up on this particular list.
Right.
Right? So, thank you.
So if we could, if it would be, if this was just something that the next board meeting, it was just part of our report and just board members just got used to seeing this, that every year they see this.
I think you're right. I think that would be certainly more encouraging.
So-
The other one that I like is that one you had in that other meeting a couple weeks ago,
Where I compare it to schools in the county?
well, the one where you just had the straight, you had maybe it was the ones in county, but it showed the growth over the last 8 years of the
I have
composite score.
Yeah.
And that one isn't in this, is it?
No.
When we went from the 16 to the 17.1.
Yeah, I left that out, and that's a pretty powerful slide. I was
Yeah.
just trying to wrap my head around what I could share with you in a half an hour, which I think I've already gone over that. but-
Yeah, so anyway, if, I don't know, Carolyn,
No,
if we could
I'll-
just get that for the board packet for the next board meeting.
I'll take care of that. Our superintendent has given me an excuse to miss the next couple of board meetings, as I have one class before I'm ABD. So, Pat Reagan, who is over here, who is
Be happy to do it one
my
time.
colleague, if I'm not around, Mrs. Reagan, can you help with this? And she will gladly help. So. just-
At the next, so I'm requesting for the next actual board meeting, not the next, well, that would be Monday, would
That would be Monday.
Whenever we do the minutes for this meeting, is it possible? I could actually just do these 2 pages here.
Mrs.
I'll check
as a
with
se-
Mrs. Neal on that. I
Yep.
don't know what that agenda is set, but I'll make sure that she is aware of your request.
Yeah, or the following board meeting would be,
You're finishing up, right?
October.
okay, the next one, the one after that's fine.
Before I write, I have to knock out one class.
You can be ABD for a long time.
I understand that, Dr. Reagan. I'm not trying to be ABD any longer than I am.
But you gotta get to ABD.
That's right.
All
So-
but done.
So I'll have an ABD until the first week of this. I'll have a designee until the first week of December. And Mrs. Reagan will help out where needed if you have any questions about these things. All set?
It's good to me.
Good to know.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a
All
good
right,
suggestion.
The next is the report.
Pastor Moody, Ms. Slade, Dr. Baker. I'm here today to present just a very quick overview, summary of the Title VII Native American Grant 2011-2012. With me is Ms. Betty Davis, and she's here representing the program. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the enhancements that have taken place to the program since the end of the 2011-2012 school year, which I'm sure you'll want to hear about. And just a reminder of how we got to this point historically, it was back in February that I presented the loop evaluation, and then you found out there were a series of other reports from the 2011-2012 we wanted to have reviewed, so we got those in the doc and scheduled. Learning Corner was presented in May of this past year, and the Native American report was scheduled for July, and then I can't remember whether we either got bumped from the schedule or the meetings got canceled, but in July-
Meeting
We
was
had the appointment of the board member, it just ended up not
So
doing.
July and August,
July and
didn't
August,
happen.
all right,
Here
yeah.
we are in
Yeah,
September,
right.
here to present the report. And there are a series of others, I think there are 3 more reports from 11-12 that I am more than happy to present, but just know that right now, we're in the process of wrapping up reports of those same programs for 2012-13.
Okay.
And those usually, I work on those over the summer and fall months, and then there's a process of reviewing those internally with staff, and then they have to go to the superintendent. But I'm thinking that maybe by November, we can start getting those scheduled if you want to do that.
Okay, okay, we'll work
So
with,
think about that, we can provide a list of those evaluations and maybe get those on the schedule, if that's what you'd like to do.
okay.
All right. So you have a copy of the full report, you got that, way back, I think, in February. And also more recently, I put together an executive summary, and that's what I'll be speaking from today. Executive summary is basically the same thing as a full report, except I take out all the findings. So all the charts and graphs and narrative, I take out. But it has the key information there that you need for today. Starting on page 1, there's an introduction there that kind of gives you the background to what this grant is all about. It's funded. It's a very small grant. Totals less than $100,000, $76,383. So it's not a huge grant. It served this past year, 11-12, 21 Native American students. The focus was on middle school grades, and there was one full-time Native American tutor who provided educational services primarily in reading and writing. So typically, the tutor would go in the classrooms. Frequently, he pulled the students out into the hallways or other rooms. Would either work with materials that the teacher provided, or maybe have their own kit of materials they could work with students on. On average, students had, 28 hours of tutoring over the entire course of the year. So when you think about the total amount of services and education that students get over a year's time, it's not a huge amount, but it is something anyway. So so the next page, on page 12, you have the methodology section, describes where we get the data from. And the focus was on gains on math from fall to spring in reading. So, program strengths, one recommendation from recent evaluations to find ways to increase the number of tutoring sessions each student receives. In past years, when there were tutors, they were kind of spread among lots of different schools and spent a lot of time traveling, and also being pulled out of those sessions for meetings. So the program staff is really kind of focused on making their time more efficiently used and reducing the number of distractions. So as a result of that, they succeeded increasing the average number of tutoring sessions from 16 during 2007-2008 to, as I mentioned, 28 during the 11-12 school year. So that's a significant improvement in that area. The area where challenges persist, tutored students overall met their typical reading growth goals in lower proportions than did district students in those same grade levels. Additionally, more tutored Native American students had percentile score losses from fall to spring than had percentile score gains. So do keep in mind, we're dealing with a very small population. There were only 19 students who had matching scores from fall to spring. When you have a small population, the scores of a few students can significantly impact averages. And I would mention that some of the students who did have gains from fall to spring they had significant gains. I mean, they were notable. So I'm a little hesitant, to put a lot of stock in an average score, average percent when you're dealing with such a small population, but there you are. There are two recommendations. One is that Native American tutors should continue to meet with classroom teachers who identify tutored students' reading and writing needs. Training should be provided to help tutors understand how to access various online math reports and then how to use them to identify tutored students' relative strengths. Tutors and teachers should collaborate on effective strategies to address the identified areas of need. And Betty will talk about what's been done in that area. And then the second one on the final page, the instructional support provided by Native American tutors will likely benefit from the development of a written instructional model that detailed how tutoring time should be used. So just those two things, just kind of focus the program a little more for the Native American tutor. And unless you have any questions about any of the findings, I think we'll just turn it over to Betty and let her talk about some of the enhancements and changes that have taken place in the program this past school year.
Good afternoon, Pastor Moody, Ms. Slade, and Dr. Baker. It's my honor to be here this evening to speak on behalf of our program. The Native American program is a federally funded program, and we receive our monies through the Department of Education out of Washington, D.C. The only way that we can receive these monies is when we collect student eligibility forms, and that's a 506 form, which states that that child is Native American. If we don't have a 506 form on those students, then we cannot tutor those students. In our program, we have a goal that we had set for ourselves, and it's to meet the basic educational and cultural needs of Native American students by providing them with the knowledge of their own people and to encourage them to be successful in school. For our program, to identify the criteria for our tutoring, they have to have a 506 form on file that's in our office. How we attain those 506 forms, we have to go from door to door. So when we get a student list, on that list from the district, after count day, we look at all of the students that have inputted the PEB of I. And so we have to go door to door and actually find out if they are a Native student. And so a lot of times we're knocking on doors and they're actually Indians from India. And so, or when they say Native American, they say, well, we were born in America, so we are natives to America. And so, we have a staff of 5 people, and so we go in pairs to door and just knock on doors.
Can I ask a question? Do many of the Native American population have the forms, or is there a difficulty with that?
They don't have the forms. The forms actually, we have the forms.
Okay.
And once the community comes together through one of our events, and they know of other children who could possibly be Native, then we actually go to their home and find out if they are Native. But no, not each student has their own form. There's a difference between the student eligibility form and the Native, I was gonna say pedigree.
We understand that one.
Yeah. To,
Predominant ethnic background.
I mean, the
Yeah.
federal designation.
but actually, all Native Americans have to carry a card that says they are Native
Right.
American.
Under-
And we
understand
have
that.
ones that say we are actually Native American. And so, with some of the students that we find out, they have a PEB of B, W, and H. So they may not have enrolled as a Native student, but someone in their school has said that they are Native. And so we, like, again, we just go to their door and find out if they are. And if they are, then we collect a 506 form on them. We also are in a building where we have Head Start programs. And so we have a file that, we call it our beginning file. So when they come into Head Start, we pick up their children and then the babies. So that when they do come to our schools, then we can just pull that form back up.
Thank you.
We work with students in the 5th through the 8th grade, and that was decided at one of our, what we call a public hearing, where our parents and the community came together. And there was that transitional stage where we were talking about the students from the 5th through the 6th, going into the 6th grade, if they weren't in a middle school that went from kindergarten through 8th. And so just that transitional stage, we wanted to work with them. And we noticed that our middle school students had lower percentiles on the map. So they have to score under the 50th percentile before we even look at picking them up for tutoring.
Question. So there are only 24 Native American students that are receiving tutoring?
We have 318 students in GRPS. We only have one full-time tutor at today. And so we chose to tutor 20 students, going to 9 schools. This program has been here since 1975. And they had tutors before who were tutoring like 120 students. We had to narrow it down to a few students with the hours of work that our employees have. So last year, or 2011, 2012, we had one full-time tutor. And he was driving to 8 schools and he worked with 21 students. These 5th through 8th graders, we follow them all the way from the 5th grade through the 8th grade. Try to help them with organization, with their reading, with writing. And so we did a pull-out session with those students, and I didn't put that on this slide, but we also did push-in. Well, that's where the tutor actually goes into the classroom and works with that student on whatever the teacher is teaching that day. Let's see. Based upon Walter's recommendations, we did for this school year, for the 2012-2013 school year, We actually met with Steve Petros many times to understand the map a little bit better.
And the reports.
And the reports, student profile, the progress reports, and how to use that data to enhance our tutoring sessions. We increased the number of tutoring sessions, and the reason why we increased that was because we did hire 2 part-time reading tutors, along with that full-time person. And Walter had included an instructional plan, so that was developed, and that was taken into the classroom or to the schools with the tutor. And from 2000, in 2012, 2013, we had 12 out of 23 students that raised their scores considerably. So we were really happy with that. And this year, 2013, 2014, we only have 1 full-time tutor again. So we've gone back to that, and we're in the process of trying to hire another tutor, part-time tutor. All right, this is just a copy of our instructional model, and it has our push-in for an hour, the pull-outs for an hour, and these are the areas that we work on while our tutors are in there. And where you see the 20, 30, 40, that basically is the minutes that they work on that particular skill. We also have an after-school program. The grant does not pay for this program. Actually, Board of Ed monies is put to this piece of the program. So the after-school program curriculum, we have that, and I'll show you a slide of that in a minute. But in that, we have an after-school program that has a certified teacher that comes in, and she actually works with the students. We have a student advocate that works in our building that her duties are student community, so she actually helps put on events for our families, and she works in that after-school program. This student advocate, she also does Native American presentations within the classrooms, kindergarten through 3rd grade. And for professional development, these are some of the areas that we're working with in our tutoring program. So we also go with Reading Street as the teachers are using that in their schools. We also use the curriculum books. So, and we use the Lexile range. So the progress report that Steve has provided for us for each student, we look at the range, we find out what they're interested in, and then we find books within that range.
So the after-school program this is something that's open to all Native American students, or just these 20?
It's actually anyone in the district.
Anyone in the district?
Yeah.
And then where is this located?
At Straight School,
A street school.
and it's on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
And then, you have any idea of how many students
attend.
take? Yeah.
It fluctuates,
Yeah.
but we have anywhere from 15 to 25 students that attend.
What's the number of Native Americans, identified Native Americans in the district now?
318?
308.
Oh, is that, I thought that used to
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
It still is true.
Yes.
Okay.
It is when we sent in our grant,
Has that increased or decreased?
it actually stayed the same.
Has it?
But then as of today, we are, I think, maybe 120 students below that number, so we're still trying to find our kids.
Oh, sure.
And then we've noticed, some have moved from one school to another, so when we went to that school, we thought they left the district, but then here they're at another school.
pretty common for our kids.
So we have in our after-school program a traditional curriculum. Oh, no. Miss Evans?
Talk fast.
I can't. We have a traditional curriculum, where we actually, in that, I can just tell you what happens that evening when they get to, the program. At 5 o'clock, when they arrive, they receive a sack lunch from, I can't think of the place now, the basket.
Kids' food basket.
Yes, thank you. They actually provide our lunches for our kids, because they're coming at a time where it is actually dinner time. And we've tried earlier and we've tried later, and those times didn't work for us. 5 o'clock works for us for some reason. So they come in, they receive that lunch, and then when they're at the tables, at each table, what we do is we have a word there, and one of the words would be honesty or respect. And there are 7 grandfathers that we teach our children, and they're kind of like the character education piece. But they have a discussion on that word, so as they're eating, they're discussing, and at each table is also a mentor who guides that discussion. So when they're finished with that, the groups will break off, and the younger children who are in kindergarten through 5th grade will be doing, they'd be working with our teacher that we have, who is actually volunteering her time, and she works with them on foundational skills and I'm sorry, my mouth is dry. Comprehension skills, speaking and listening skills. And so after a time frame there, we change, and so the older kids are with her and the younger kids are in a more cultural setting. So where we're teaching them more of the Native American piece that, you know, most of the children haven't grown up with that because they're urban Indians. The mentors are there guiding them as everything while they are with the academic piece. Oh, thank you. And then we also have a book club that meets once or twice a week. It all depends on what the students would like to do, and that's usually the middle school students that do that, and they meet at Schuler's bookstore. And some of the students that are in the book club are also in the after-school program, and they also receiving tutoring during the week. And the older students, we do have like a college night where we talk about going to college, we bring speakers in, and we also take trips to colleges. And this is just what our student advocates person does. And so she supports students, she promotes parent involvement, she encourages, she supports participation in after-school programs, she maintains personal goal setting for the students, proper organizational skills, gets parents in touch with wraparound services. So with the students, she goes actually into the school, works with them, gets them an agenda, helps them to plan everything out, their homework, the classes that they're in, what they need to do, even how to clean out their lockers sometimes because they can't find their homework, it's in there someplace. So she helps them with all of that. She also sits in on meetings, team meetings in the schools, and then she meets with, that's part of the team approach, and then she also keeps a positive relationship with the students and their families. She assists with transition into middle school, assists parents with gaining knowledge and assistance from other agencies, and we all have this documented in what we just have developed is an access folder where we can all get into the folder and look at how our students are doing. And then for our Native American presentations, we do have kindergarten, we actually do kindergarten through third grade. And this is just a piece of one of the presentations for the second and third grade. So that concludes power slide.
What questions do you have?
How long has the program been going on?
This program, I have been with the district 18 years, and this program has been going since for 17 years.
Okay.
So, and all of the mentors are actually volunteers. And I think that I also had put on here that I may have missed it, but we also have community events to try to bring our families in together to build that relationship with them. And they do trust us, and they do make phone calls to us whenever things are happening in the school and need our assistance. We're always there for them.
I may have missed this. You may have said it, I probably just did not hear it. Are the mentors Native Americans as well?
So,
Okay.
we were lucky the first year that I worked here, there were 9 Native American mentors. We only have, I think, maybe 3 out of the 10 that we have.
Is there any way you can do some recruitment to find out if there are other Native Americans in the city that might want to participate in being a mentor?
We do, at every event, we have a survey that we pass out to anyone who attends. And in that survey, it also, if they would like to be a mentor. And then we call them and they'll come and fill out. So we have over 30 volunteers in our program. They're just not all Native American.
Now, the mentors are mentoring on the academic level, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I got the impression from just talking to people outside of here that this, and also from what you're saying, so even though there's 15 to 25 kids that do the after-school program, but some of these community events would be much larger than that and have a lot of, okay, and that becomes a community.
The problem that we have with any of our programming is that we don't provide transportation. Our families don't have transportation to any of the events that we have. So in our surveys, every time we pull that piece up, that's the biggest
Yeah.
obstacle. So they don't have a way to get to our program.
Are there, let me just ask one, this is a pretty broad question. Are there areas that, in your interaction with people in the community, that they feel like is lacking from what Grand Rapids Public Schools offers to the community? I mean, I know that's a broad question, but
That is a broad question. The only thing that I know that parents, that from some of the surveys and just speaking with the parents, is that there isn't, not even just in our district, but even in the colleges and universities, there isn't, no one's teaching the Ojibwe language, and so, there are people out there who can teach that, and it's just that it's not here. And so that's that's a big concern of theirs. With our history, we have languages dying every day. So it's just trying to get that language and grasp that language and try to save it. So the nearest place is in Lansing, Michigan State University, and it's Helen Roy who actually teaches that class.
Program when I was at Kalamazoo Valley Intermediate School District. We had a Native American program, and I hired some of the mentors and staff from just west of there. just east of there. And is there still a program in Kalamazoo County?
The Title VII, no, because Val Janowski was there.
Yep.
Yep, and she.
Kettle Hut?
Yep, and she, actually, when she left that program, actually, I think the district took that program over, so.
Okay.
They don't have a program anymore.
Because Val was one that we employed. Yeah.
They
Interesting.
did go and actually
Small
do a-
world. Is there anybody I don't know?
Yeah, I know. All right, thank you very much.
That's interesting.
Very much.
And I too have to go to class.
That is a small world.
She works for the Huron Potawatomi now.
Does she?
They're a grade grader.
Very good. That's
I
great.
just have these brochures I wanted to.
That'd be great.
If you ever want to stop by.
Very
or
interesting.
anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Actually having a picnic, so. oh, it's
She
coming
needs,
up on the
she needs.
I'm so
Interesting.
Okay, the final agenda item here, I'm going to pass, I'll say, give one to Dana here. Carolyn wants to come up. So I met with Carolyn and Teresa a couple weeks ago to discuss the upcoming schedule for the for this meeting today, and then also for the rest of the fall. And both Teresa and I were also thinking about trying to come up with ways to make sure that what this committee also does is educate the board about the academics, such as us knowing what the MME scores, et cetera, is. So Teresa was particularly, our Superintendent Neal is particularly concerned about the evaluation, that the board be educated about the different arenas of the evaluation. And since that's what we do, so if we look at this, this is actually the chart that this outline that you have here is basically the superintendent evaluation. And so the top one is academic achievement. And so these would be the measurements for the superintendent this year based on academic achievement. The top one, the assessments, MAP, MEP, MME, and attendance are the kind of primary academic assessments that we're doing this year. So the three major academic assessments, and then also attendance, which is a focus on this year, that would be measuring. And that basically those four items would rotate by meeting. So we do MME perhaps next month. We do MAP, MEP. So my son, who's in the sixth grade, took the MAP test his second day of school. Was it the second day of school? Yeah, so that was the first thing that we did. And numbers came home, that ended up meaning something. So we could have the MAP discussion in October. We did have, back in the spring, we had all of these given to us at once, if you remember. We had a long, and we never got through it all.
Right.
And, you had questions about it. It's just, so that's probably not a good model of doing one session a year on every single assessment. So we discussed that we would like to do this as a rotating basis. The others of these, and I think that this is something that Teresa, the superintendent, wants to be discussed at the retreat, is how to include the other categories in leadership, administration, and transformation within the committee structure. Does this reflect your memory of this? So with that, I would say that the primary, we should be, reduction of suspensions has come up. It's come up this year. The safety in the schools, the governance boards, those have come up. But that what for sure should happen is a focus on assessments each year, that us being, aware of what's happening with assessments in a kind of a deep way and then also a general way. So in other words, getting to this understanding of what happened in each of the high schools with the MME score, that there was this October assessment, that there's an attempt to improve the score, and then how do we do in relationship to last year? How does this
So
fit with you?
you're looking at the Roman numeral 1 here as something that this committee is going to deal with.
Well, and,
Assessments,
and for us to consider if any of the other things on here fit within this committee's viewpoints. So for instance, does the evaluation process under leadership, is that something that the Academic Achievement Committee should be checking in with on occasion? I mean, we want to think about what it is of the entire board's responsibility, and then what it's the responsibility of this committee. And to the extent that this committee actually accomplishes, something, rather than just being the place that we hear about these things and no one else knows about them.
I would think that it would be within the realm of this committee to deal with certainly academic achievement issues, which would include the governance boards and PBIS and so on. I'm not sure that clearly finance takes care of the finance committee and the budget. And is that what you're thinking, that this is, that Roman numeral 1 is our purview, if you will?
Well, no, I would like,
I see Roman number 1 as our primary focus. I'm not sure where customer service and evaluation process and cabinet principles fit in the Academic Achievement Committee's role. I mean, however, I do think it's important that the board needs to be aware of what's taking place in the academic achievement arena. I do know that sometimes the president asked, is there a report on the academic achievement? I think that's a prime time where we can give a
Yeah.
report on what takes place at that time. I'm just, right now, I'm not sure on these other things. That's not to say that it can't be.
right.
Just
No, I
not
understand.
sure.
Yeah, and I'm not wanting to consider, well,
I think it's academic achievement, Roman numeral 1 is what we deal with. And there's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of
no, it is a lot.
cover. So
I mean,
I don't
yeah.
see us being involved, and I would agree with you, Pastor Moody, that, the administrative, the leadership, transformation is kind of involved with everything.
Right.
But I don't see us being involved with bargaining, finance. I'm not sure what upkeep and sales is.
Well, here's the way, I think that this can be a discussion that we can have at the retreat.
Sure.
And like, for instance, last year, we did focus on teacher evaluation, which would fit under perhaps leadership. It was a new arrangement. We wanted to understand it, and we spent a lot of time with it. It's not necessarily something, not necessarily something that might be ongoing, but maybe we should think about it. In terms of finance and budget is, I agree, that that's what the finance committee does. How much, to some extent, what I would like is that when we discuss finances and budget, that we all know the implications that come from academics. Okay, so if we're cutting positions, are those positions the one that have been working with the students from October to March to get them to improve their, the MME scores, and that we're taking that into account? And so to some extent, I agree. Our job is then to help make sure the rest of the board understands those implications of that, and that's something that we can do. Just like the finance committee might review the purchasing orders. But I wouldn't say that necessarily, I don't want to be the one to say that we should not be looking at finance and budget.
I think the board should be looking at finance. I think this committee should deal with academic achievement. I think finance in that committee and the whole board needs to be involved in all of this.
Right.
But for this committee and the limited time we have, and this academic achievement
Okay.
is the heart of
Okay.
what we're doing. That's my take, that's what we need to be really concentrating on.
I'm in total agreement, because, once again, I want to state that when I hear our president state there's a report from the academic committee or in finance, I think that's the time when we can share with the board, or the finance committee can share with the board the findings that they are concerned with.
Right.
And us with the academic achievement. And sure, some of these things might come up, but I think our primary focus should be academics, because the report that Mr. Gorman gave with Ottawa and Union, there it seems to be some phenomenal things getting ready to happen with the students. And the support of teachers is important to me as well. Because I definitely don't want to use this as a base to figure out if a teacher's doing a good job or not, or trying to look at a financial piece to say that this is based on them not teaching well.
Right. So in terms of, let's say, I think that, if you don't mind, I want to pursue that. If we were to, so when we get to the board meeting and we present a report to the rest of the board, like for instance for today, what is it that we would present?
Those two pieces that you brought up to Mr.
Yeah.
Gorman,
Yeah,
I think those are important.
okay.
That would be something that I would bring up to the board members, so that they can see that there is a significant change that occurred with Ottawa, with a particular number of students who were gone and a certain number of students who have been followed. When you talk about that cohort group is a group that you want to make sure that they do some substantial things in their learning or taking their tests. Those are the kind of things I think
Okay.
the board would need to hear.
Okay, so then actually then in a way, what our committee meetings will actually be is deciding what we make sure we highlight to the next board meeting
Yes.
and what pieces come out of it.
Yeah.
Because we can't summarize Ron
No.
and,
Right.
the Native American
No.
program. We can't summarize, and that's been kind of tough. But if we just, but yet we haven't really made a decision, what is it that's most important to bring to the committee?
But although the
To
Native
the
American
committee of the whole.
program would be good to talk about.
Yeah.
Would be good to
Now-
just report on.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, we can report that it's happened.
And they should be reading what's happening in the committees anyway.
Right.
Right, we all get
So
the
far.
packet, so all of us will get so all this information
Yes,
will be in the
yes,
packet.
yes,
And,
yes.
and we will all vote on the minutes of this meeting. Actually, if President Follis says I don't think,
Yeah, and I think Pastor Moody's suggestion is fantastic. I like the discussion. I think to just give a summary so you get the, what everything was covered, but to maybe focus on something in particular to drive home. We should all be reading it, but repetition, especially on things as essential as the MME score. So I think if you, zero on something that you can really highlight and do a little bit more depth.
Be good.
Time, but a visual is always good, so.
yeah. Okay, so how does that sound, Carolyn? Is that, so basically like today is great. So we chose, well, these two charts from the
Yes.
discussion on MME. Let's make sure the board gets to see that, and it won't be a discussion item, but it will be just a report out and just say, make sure that, and every board member will have that on their table and say, okay, please look at these numbers. Note the changes between October and we'll just move on from there. And if we do that, if we rotate those four, or maybe others, but I think that really rotating these four is okay, because we have a budget amendment every 4 months too. So, I mean, it would be, so we got September, we found out what happened in last year's MME scores. So October, November, December, January, or February, Ron can come back and tell us what has been happening since September on the MME scores. How did those October scores look this year? And then we'll do it again in May, and we'll find out. And we'll do the same with the map, because the map is offered 3 times a year. And, and then maybe later on we'll know what the MME scores are. And attendance is something. Did we discuss dates for the attendance? We wanted to do that pretty quick, right?
We did add the possibility of a conversation about, how we are addressing Common Core or addressing some of these deficits that we are seeing instructionally or through curriculum adjustments.
There was a list of reports that we had agreed to earlier in the year, to like the Native American one, the one that Walter. Common Core was one of those, and we did mention that it would be nice if the board knew
That
what
would be
Common
good.
Core was.
That would be helpful.
So, but we could do that as a report like the Native American was
Yes.
today.
That would be good.
Okay, great. That's a great idea.
Good.
So, cool. All right. Any other suggestions? All right. Cool. Adjourn.
Yep. Thank you.